Okay, this is, of course, 2, 12, 18. So, we left our heroes talking about tolerance curves. You have a tolerance curve that you have graphed. And you may not have gotten the back colored. I'm hoping that most of you at least got that backside graphed to some degree.
Yeah.
Now, the paper, the packet, is talking about steelheads. What are steelheads? No, they're fish. But they're fish that have very specific habitat requirements. And they actually really need some pretty cold, pretty high oxygen water. So we talked about poor little Nemo and the fact that Nemo seems to have really specific requirements for salinity. Poor little dead Nemo. And now we're talking about a wild species that has pretty specific requirements. When water temperatures go up and the water gets hotter, what happens to steelheads? They die. They don't do well. They start off not reproducing sufficiently to maintain their populations, and then above a certain point, they just die. They are very intolerant of warm water. And you tend to find steelheads. Where do you find steelheads, Cameron? I'm sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot. But I know you know. Do you go steelhead fishing?
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you mean?
Mountain streams?
Or like Great Lakes.
Okay. Cold water bodies. And a lot of these you find in smaller mountain streams. They're well shaded. You've got trees hanging over the creek or the river that help keep the water cool. You've got meltwater coming off hills. In some cases you have springs feeding in to those streams. This is cold water. This is really awesome water. This is water that when you step in it barefoot, you're going to go, woohoo! It's going to wake you up. When you get into a warm water system, you're not going to find these guys. They're very intolerant to changing water temperatures. Now, what about the back? So this is dissolved oxygen levels. And your graph probably looks something like this. Is there a relationship between temperature and dissolved oxygen? First of all, what is dissolved oxygen? Who here has ever had a beverage with a gas dissolved in it? What beverage did you have that had a gas dissolved in it, Timothy McGeehan? Any type of pop. What's the gas? Carbon dioxide, CO2, yeah. You can pump a gas into water in solution. In streams, there is no pumping station where they pump oxygen into the water. Where does the oxygen get in the water? When the water goes over the rocks and it gets churned, that actually adds, any place you see bubbling, you're seeing oxygen getting dissolved into water. Now, you have had a beverage with a gas dissolved in it. Who here has drunk cold, crisp pop with so many bubbles that it makes your nose hurt? Do you like it that way? I don't like it that way. It makes me cough and sputter, and I don't drink much pop anyway. So, okay. What if you leave it sitting open on the counter overnight? Is it bubbly?
No.
No, it's flat. Guess what happens when the water warms up? It can hold less dissolved oxygen. A warm liquid is able to hold less gas in solution than a cold liquid. So, when the water temperature increases, are they dying just because the water's warmer? Well, partly. They don't really do well in warm water. But look what else that warm water affects. Warm water affects the dissolved oxygen level. And these are fish that are really sensitive to dissolved oxygen. Okay, I'm just going to do a little understanding background check. A lot of you have gone fishing. A lot of you have put something on a hook and thrown it in water and hoped. What is it, a jerk on one end of a line waiting for a jerk on the other? So many of you have been that jerk. I've been that jerk. Ha 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 ha. So, how do fish breathe? How do fish get oxygen? Talk about it at your table. Talk to one another. I'm spying for one word. Gills. I hear lots of people saying gills.
I meant gills.
She meant gills. She meant gills. Gills are an amazing little biological machine. When oxygenated water passes over those gills, the gills extract the oxygen because fish, just like you, need oxygen in every cell in their body. Okay? They don't breathe water, but the water passes over their gills and they're able to extract the oxygen from the water. Okay. Do you think that there are fish that can tolerate lower oxygen conditions than steelhead?
Yes.
Yeah. That goldfish that I mentioned, my 10-cent goldfish from the street fair, I think I had one that lived to be literally 7 years old. And I was a little kid. I completely abused that fish. I forgot to change the water. Things got cruddy. Things got gross. And that fish just kept ticking. Do you think that a steelhead would have tolerated that kind of abuse? No. He'd been dead. Keep that in mind because we're going to start to talk more about how these changing abiotic conditions affect populations. Right now, we're just kind of laying some foundations. We're just trying to understand how these things fit together. What if conditions are not the way you want them? So we'll think back to temperature. Whoops. There's our temperature curve. So, here's the water that the steelhead would like. If the abiotic factors around them, the temperature, the salinity, whatever else, doesn't work for them, can they change their internal conditions in some way to stay in their green zone? Got the green zone. So you got to stay in your optimal zone. This is where you do best. This is where you can grow and thrive and reproduce. Yay! You got two choices. You can control your body to stay in your green zone, or you can let your body go back and forth with the environment and be okay with that. So you and I, let's think about temperature. We control our temperature. You shiver, you sweat. These are all mechanisms that your body has to maintain being in the green zone. Now, being out of that green zone and your body trying to push you back in requires energy. I've mentioned that I like to backpack and I like to hike, and I also like to eat. I like to eat a lot. I like to eat as much as I possibly can. I told you about my little scientific experiment over Christmas. How much mass can I put on with unlimited Christmas cookies in 14 days? The answer was 9 pounds. So, yeah, it's all for science, man. It's all for science. In the winter, if you are out in that super, super, super cold weather and your body is fighting to keep you in the green zone, do you know what you can eat? Oh my God. You go backpacking in the winter and it's 10 degrees and you're hiking up hills, you can eat sticks of butter. Not that you should, but you can eat all the chocolate bars and the cookies and the blocks of cheese that you want because your body needs so many calories. Imagine a tiny wood stove in the center of your being. There is no tiny wood stove. This is a metaphor. You do not have a wood stove in your abdomen. Imagine that you did, and your body is just shoveling on the wood because your body is fighting to maintain your temperature in that optimal zone. So, oh my God, winter backpacking is the best because you can eat everything. You can pack like 5,000 calories a day and still lose weight if it's really cold and you're going a really long way. It's great. I love it. Give me more chocolate bars. That's one option, is to have a body that will keep you in the green zone, that will keep you in your optimal range. The other option, and this is what reptiles take. Yeah. No. Well, yeah, below a certain degree. But they're what we call conformers. So we regulate our conditions to keep us in the optimal zone. These conformers, their body temperature, for instance, changes with their environment. Who here has ever seen a snake in the winter? A cold snake. Or anybody have lizards at home? See, I need to get a lizard tank. I really need to get a lizard tank for in here. So lizards are conformers. Snakes are conformers. I lived in an old farmhouse for many years, and I used to get snakes in the basement. Anybody have that experience of having snakes in the basement? I loved it because I like snakes.
I did too.
So, okay. In the winter, they're very slow. Because they're cold. When their temperature drops, all their body processes slow down. And so you can walk up to a very cold snake and pick it up and talk to it and call it George, and it's just going to go. And they're slow, slow, slow when they're cold. Because they're conformers. So they can't regulate their temperature, but the colder they are, the slower they get. Now, above a certain temperature, what's going to happen to them? They're going to die. Below a certain temperature, what's going to happen to them? They're going to die. They can't control their internal conditions. What's your other option? If the abiotic environment that you're in doesn't work for you, you can get out. You can escape. You can migrate or you can go to sleep. I have threatened to hibernate through the month of February, but I've never done it yet. So if you can't control your conditions, and a lot of the organisms that are doing this escape route, well, not all of them. A lot of them are actually regulators. I mean, bears and groundhogs are mammals. They control their body temperature, but it takes so much energy to stay warm in the winter. There's not enough energy available for them in the environment. The clover's all under 6 inches of snow. It's easier to go to sleep. It's easier to just go in the den and go into this period of reduced activity. That's one thing. The other option is migrating. So birds are regulators. They do control their internal conditions. But during the winter, it's really hard to get enough calories to make that work. So they head south. Tomorrow, we're going to do some comparisons of these different strategies, regulation and conforming, dormancy and migration, and look at where it's an advantage to organisms to pursue one of those strategies. These are adaptations. The ones that didn't do fill in the blank, died and didn't reproduce. The ones that did passed on their genes, and now they're all here. So we're going to stop there. Tomorrow, like I said, we'll do some comparisons and we'll start to talk about niche.